So I'd like to welcome Dr. Cynthia Cooper with, you tell me the name of your business. Creative.
Well, it's Creative Psychology Associates.
Okay.
But I'm the only associate. So I'm the one that fields and does everything.
Well, yes. Master of all trades, right?
Yes, yes.
Okay, so welcome, Cynthia. We are excited you're here because you're going to talk about a very on-point topic and one I know all of us could write a book about. So
yes,
yeah,
we've been pandemic living. We're in our 12th month, going to start our 13th month here. And I don't know about any of you out there, but I never dreamt that we would be this far into it in the way that we are. It's really created or kind of blown up, I think, an opening for all of us to look at our lives and determine, what we want to pull into our lives and what at this stage we're willing to let go of. So I think also it's a time of grief because many of us are grieving, the life that was pre-COVID and trying to sort through that. And I think then grief is one of those things that touches us in all kinds of ways and tends to ripple out into other areas where we're still grieving. Perhaps it's the loss of a loved one, the loss of a career, the loss of a dream, those types of things. But yeah, those get evoked right at this point in time. And I think the other thing that comes up for a lot of people is, there's a lot of fear and a lot of judgment that's going on. And I think one of the things we need to be able to do is soothe and calm ourselves in the face of that fear. Because fear is one of those life lessons that come through, and what we're attempting to learn, or the outcome of dealing with fear, is the concept of courage. Because it takes bravery and courage to face fear. Right?
Yes. Oh, yeah.
Mm-hmm. And whether we even looked at it in those terms or not, that's clinically what I see going on in the outer world, and also what I'm experiencing as a person. This is really one of the few times in the history of, mental fitness that the very people that clients go to for assistance, those same people are also experiencing what the client is.
Yeah, so that's interesting, right? It's
yes.
like a cancer doctor
yes.
treating a cancer patient.
Yes, yes. And so, as somebody in the mental health field, I think it's helpful that, we all have our way of coping with the very stresses we're experiencing, and then be able to sort those out and pass those along to our clients. Many of us as women are in the role of, we have gone from being parents, perhaps, caregivers to other people, teachers, and also the wage earner in the family. And before, we weren't carrying so many of those hats with so many restrictions, particularly, many of our coping mechanisms have been cut off. The ability to get together with family and friends and do it safely and within your comfort zone, for a long time, that was kind of taken away from us. And there was also a concept of, if you still went through with those things, despite what you were being told, then you could feel ashamed or guilty about it for seeking out that help and that support within those frameworks.
I mean, it goes as far, and I don't mean to interrupt, but
by all means.
Even the fact that when somebody, and I can say me and anyone I know, coughs or sneezes, there is a shame almost that
yes.
I have allergies yes. and I cough all the time.
Yes.
I mean, Joelle
yes.
just did it today. I'm coughing, I'm sorry,
yes.
It's a real thing. We make fun of it, but it is a real thing.
It is a real thing, and see our discomfort with it because we kind of make a little joke about it to diffuse the situation. But yeah, there's a defensiveness about it. We feel we have to justify you know, hey, I'm not contagious. Don't alienate me here. Don't give me what I call the stare, you know, the 5-mile stare, and people start backing away. Yeah, yeah. So here, instead of thinking we can come together and support one another, we're now look like we're Typhoid Mary, and we need to like distance and stay away.
Right.
Yeah. And it's also a time too where I think our former coping strategies, you know, and I think it's helpful for people to, you know, look within and determine, okay, what are my coping strategies when I'm struggling? What are those? And as a therapist, often what gets people into therapy is when their usual coping strategies are no longer effective. They aren't, you know, and often those coping strategies are things we learn when we're younger. So we learn coping strategies from a time where maybe we are younger, which means we have rather more primitive coping strategies rather than more adult and mature coping strategies.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So we don't have to confess right now, do we,
Doctor? No, no, please, no.
I was gonna say I've been in therapy for 8 years, so I know exactly what you're talking about.
Yeah. We go to the old coping strategy even harder, and then feel defeated because it's not working.
Can you like describe some typical coping strategies that perhaps aren't mature?
Well, just
so we can know, maybe.
Yeah,
you don't have to go in.
I think denial is one of them. You know, realize a part of you recognizing that there's a problem or something's off or something's not working, and then you minimize it or you outright deny it.
And can I add another one that I see frequently? And the only reason I say that is because I'm a yoga instructor, and that's kind of one of the things I look for is to try and control or make an infinite situation finite, or control a situation that will never be controlled.
Yes. Yeah. And I think, you know, it's a huge life lesson if you can get yourself to a place where you recognize you don't have any control over outcome. You only have control over how you respond to the circumstances.
Right.
And you know, we're in a worldwide, certainly, place where none of us can control the outcome. And even the people we're looking at, i.e. the government, no matter where you are, or the healthcare professionals, where there's so much division about what to do, who's safe, who's not, how many masks to wear. You can't seem to get a straight answer. And then there's the frustration with, you know, trying to do the right thing for those of us that are more perfectionistic oriented or rule followers. So we think we're doing the right thing, and then we find out they've changed the rules partway through the game. And then you're trying to figure out what in God's name is going on here. Yeah.
Well, you just described everyone I've ever met.
Oh my God. I'm just like,
yeah, I so get that.
It's a constant discussion in this office, I will tell you that.
Yeah, and in many homes and in many families. You know, I think, are you guys still there?
Yes, it's me.
Okay, just my screen went to the HVCC thing. Yeah, one of the pieces for me, I think if you can remember the ABC piece, which is, first of all, acknowledge what you're feeling. Okay, if you're using denial or minimization, I think the lesson there is acknowledge what you're feeling. And for those of you that are parents, or you are dealing, you know, or you're dealing with aging parents, I think it's a good place to begin. How do you feel about, you know, what's going on with your children or your parents, or what's going on in your life? So A stands for acknowledge your feelings. For some people, it's talking about them. For some people, it can be journaling, you know, but you can't develop a strategy until you acknowledge what's going on. The second one is often you have to learn to set boundaries about it. During the pandemic, for example, it's like the boundaries can be, you know, do you wear a mask or don't you? where are your safe places to go, or the places that you feel you can be the most comfortable, and what are the ones that you absolutely feel you're not going to go to or take part in? Okay, and so that's the B stands for boundaries. So if A is acknowledge your feelings, B is set boundaries, and then the C part stands for consequences. What is the result of what you acknowledged and set boundaries around? And I think that ABC piece can be applied to almost anything in our lives. And looking back then, it's like, okay, what did I learn from it? Do I need to set different boundaries? Do I need to change the story in my head that I have about the event? Etc. So let me give you an example to make this concrete. You're out in public and you're in a crowded store and you're feeling more and more uncomfortable. Acknowledge the fact that you're feeling more and more uncomfortable, okay? The setting boundaries aspect of it, okay, what are you gonna do about, you're feeling uncomfortable here, what are you gonna do? Are you gonna stay and tolerate the discomfort? Is that the wise thing to do? Or are you gonna take yourself out of the situation?
Are you going to start a fight with the guy that doesn't wear a mask?
Yeah, yeah, cursing at them or flipping them off, as I have seen happen in public. Yeah, yeah. And so then, then what is the consequence of that? Well, the consequence can be, okay, maybe I need to change the time when I shop. Maybe I need to change the time where I shop. Maybe I need to use ClickList or whatever, any of the various and sundry grocery store and all those people, whatever their particular way of labeling what they do, maybe you need to change that. Yeah. So that can be really helpful. The second piece, the second piece often can be.
Hang on, doctors. Sally wants to ask a question.
Oh, no, good, thank you.
That is exactly me. I ClickList. It's like, I left a butcher shop because it was just so crowded, people not wearing a mask, and I was like, all right, I need to leave because I'm not getting better.
Yeah.
And I can't change the situation. So I have to leave.
Yeah. I use the phrase the story in my head because you had a story in your head when you were at the butcher. The story in your head where you're feeling uncomfortable. You can't set boundaries for other people, but you can for yourself. So the consequence is you took yourself out of the store.
So I'm not crazy.
No.
No.
You
should go to Florida and Sam's Club in Florida.
Oh.
Just saying, I was like, get me out of here.
People
are crazy.
Wow.
I didn't want to go back, but yeah.
Wow. Yeah. So we talked a little bit earlier about what your coping strategies were, and we mentioned like minimizing or denial. Sometimes people at this point in time, they're overindulging food. Some people are drinking more. Some people are engaging in perhaps, spending, because Amazon and all the other websites make it so easy for you to get lost in the world of spending on the computer. And you need to, again, kind of look back at that and decide, is that an effective coping strategy? Is that one of my other phrases? Is this helping me create the life I want to have?
So those 10 to 20 pounds of COVID weight might be a problem.
We're calling those the COVID-19
Yeah.
for 19 pounds. Yes. Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, personally, I gained 10 pounds and part of that was lack of exercise. The other part was I had more time to cook. I love to cook, which means I love to eat, which means I ate more. And it's like, okay, all of a sudden I went, wait a minute.
Yeah.
I had to come back to reality. I've lost my 10 that I gained, but man, that was an eye opener.
Yes, when we put on what I refer to as the button pants, and as opposed to, you know, the ones with the elastic waist, then it really hits home.
Yeah.
Yeah, and our muffin tops are not a good look.
Yeah. And I'm
Yeah.
not the only one. I know many, many people that
Yeah.
that's happened to. Yeah. And it's frustrating.
I think it's hard here in the Northeast and some of the other parts of the United States because of weather. It's much more difficult for us to be outside. If we kind of think back to, you know, March and April and May last year, how everybody was out walking.
Mm-hmm.
And, you know, I don't know about you, but there's been a couple of weeks here where I have not wanted to get out and walk.
Right.
And with us having our offices in downtown, you know, when I come in the morning or I'm, you know, going home in various times of the day here, it's so great now to see people out walking again.
Yeah.
So yeah. Physical exercise of whatever type it is so helpful. Being out in nature is very helpful. So earlier today here, we were talking about, okay, what are your coping strategies and how effective are they? The other thing is, you know, figuring out maybe you want to rank order those coping strategies. You know, my personal thing is I'm the best when I can be out of doors, and I really don't care what time of year it is. That's so much better for me than trying to read a book. You know, you and I were talking about podcasts earlier than that. But for me, it's just being outdoors and taking in all the 5 senses that we have, particularly when we get into like uncomfortable or panicky situations. You know, so let me flip through here. Self-soothing techniques are like using your 5 senses. And the senses are sight. What are you seeing in your immediate area? What, you know, if I'm outdoors, I'm smelling earthy things. I am smelling, if I'm in a place where there's flowers or something like that, I'm also taking in those things. In the springtime, you take in all the bloom smells that are out on the trees and what happens to be budding. You can also do that in your, you know, in your house. What are you seeing in your house? What are you smelling in your house? If you've got a certain candle or certain other aromas you do. One of the other ways to ground yourself is use taste. And for those of us that do mindfulness or meditation, you know, I encourage you, depending upon your preference, get a raisin or take a segment of an orange and sit there and give yourself 10 minutes to do all of these five things. Smell the orange, look at it, or the raisin, taste what it's like, touch it. Is it sticky? Is it cold? Is it hot? Etc. And then put either the raisin or the orange or whatever you're doing. It can be a slice of an apple or a whole apple. And just sit, what does that taste or feel like in your mouth? Because that's a coping strategy that takes you out of that mind that is always racing and always seeking. And one of the constructs that really helps me distance from that, I call that monkey brain, where it's always just flitting all over the place and doesn't seem to land anywhere but on negative things, so that we drown into them. But we're hardwired neurologically to do that, by the way, to look at the frustrated need or what's not working well, and then really kind of go down the rabbit hole into it. And there's a tipping point where you get too far into the rabbit hole and you just have to let it play its course. Or there's a tipping point where if it doesn't get that far, then your distraction or other coping mechanisms can come in and take over. So yeah, the self-soothing techniques can be helpful. I also will tell people you can get on so many apps now. They're very, very helpful to do meditation or mindfulness online. Mm-hmm. And the cool thing is we've always got our phones with us, or at least most of the time. And so you can easily look up, there's one called Calm, C-A-L-M. Mm-hmm. There is mindfulness, I think it is. Let me see here. I'm flicking through my phone.
There's another one called 10% Happier with Dan
Oh.
Harris, and he's
Oh, that's
good.
good. Yeah. Yeah. Mindfulness is one. There's Headspace. Let's see here. Yeah. There's a whole bunch of them. Some of them you have to subscribe to, but there's all free elements. Another one is Insight Timer, which I find it's Insight, INSIGHT Timer. And it actually allows you to look and see who in the world, they have little pinpoints on maps. It shows you at that moment who else is using that app to meditate with. So it kind of gives you a more collective experience. You can't interact with the other people, but it allows you to feel part of something that's bigger than just you are.
That's nice.
Yes, yeah, I really think that's cool. And one of the other things to put under your coping strategies is let's be flexible. Let's be that willow tree out in the wind rather than the oak. For those of us that are like type A personalities, perfectionists, deadline keepers, etc., that adds to our stress. And if there was ever a time to look back and be a little more flexible and kind to yourself, this is the time. Is 90% good enough? What kind of energy do you have to expend to go from 90% to 99? And is that worth it?
Yeah, my daughter is dealing with major anxiety right now, and she's got a 4.3 GPA here in high school.
Oh,
And
wow.
she actually anxiety vomited this morning in his home.
Yeah.
Because dealing with everything that's going on. So, I mean, what you're talking about is exactly what she needs to hear.
Well, we've got it on tape.
Yeah, so you can do that. Yeah. Well, and one of the techniques for dealing with anxiety is you can see your daughter goes down a rabbit hole with it to the point where she's having a physical reaction to it.
Right.
You know, to use cognitive behavioral therapy, you say, okay, what is the story in your head about it? And then you challenge them by saying, and then what? That would look like, okay, I really need to study, you know, algebra. Okay, I didn't study algebra enough. Well, what will happen if you don't? Well, I might not be able to keep my grade up as high. And then what? Well, that would let me, you know, this or this or this. And how much is good enough in that? You just keep saying, and then what? And then what? And then what? You know, to get them to understand that these are not necessarily life and death consequences of going from a 4.3 to a 4.2. Yeah.
So,
yeah.
Dr. Cooper, I do have to ask, will you take a 17-year-old patient?
Yes. Yeah. Yeah.
All right, we might be in contact.
Yeah, I prefer to deal with people who are at that age or older because it's a better fit for me when they have the ability to reflect back on who and what they are versus when I deal with, you know, kids in elementary school or whatever, that ability to reflect or have some insight is just a little bit more limited. There are other people that work with younger people and they're fabulous and I give them all the kudos. I just know enough about myself that it's not a really great fit for me. And if it's not a fit for me, I know it's not going to be good for the client. And for me, it's all about what the client needs, meeting them where they are.
No, it sounds like this might be a good fit. So I'll be talking to you.
Oh, well, you know where I'm at.
I do. I know where to.
Yeah, good. You know where I'm at. So part of my whole wanting to talk about this in terms of mental fitness is because I think that makes things a little different than mental health. I think if using the word fitness, there's a little bit, to me, a little more empowering there. that you can use it, like if you apply certain techniques, much like you do certain physical exercises, you can improve the muscle or you can improve how you react to things. So if you look at mental fitness, yeah, we're dealing with grief, we're dealing with fear, we're trying to develop courage, we're trying to develop resilience. And I think it's much more empowering to think of things as mental fitness. And so how do you go about doing that? Well, I think one of the things to do, despite the crunch we're all in, is you need to take me time every day. It doesn't have to be huge chunks of time. But really, you know, what to be able to take a certain time in your day, doesn't matter when, and try to take 15 minutes each day to relax or do something that you enjoy. For some people, it can be playing a game on their computer. It can be reading a poem. It could be, I mean, think of anything. What hits that spot for you? What is me time? My personal, go
I'm
ahead.
good at me time.
Yeah, all right. Yeah, yeah, yeah. For some people, I tell them, go take a shower, but do it mindfully, you know, because I want you to be in there paying attention to what it's like for the water to hit you, the temperature of the water. If you're using a particular soap or that has a scent to it, what's it like as you rub all over your body? Most of the time we're in the shower, but basically our mind is taking us to what we have to do that day, you know, grocery shopping, where you got to be, who you got to see, what's going on. And no, just take that time to just do that mindfully when you're in the shower. It can be a huge game changer. And another thing that's helpful is kind of maybe, if you can, tighten up your organization or how your day is going to flow. And don't be afraid to ask other people for what you need.
Mhm.
I think there's a tendency right now that we don't ask for what we need because we have an awareness that people are stretched pretty thin and we don't want to add more to their plate. But I think it's okay to ask anyway. It's up to them to set that limited boundary that we talked about earlier. And if we don't ask, we also don't get the opportunity to receive. And for people that enjoy giving, if you don't ask, you don't allow them to have that joy or that emotion that comes with giving. And as sick as we all are of Zoom meetings,
Right.
one of the things I'll say to that is, if you're participating in them, one of the stressful things is watching yourself when you're on camera. So one of my techniques is take yourself off the screen so you're not watching yourself. Because there really is such a thing as computer or Zoom fatigue. And it comes from that. Watching yourself. Yeah.
What if you like to watch
I
yourself?
know, I'm so guilty. Oh my God.
That's a whole other seminar here. Yeah, yeah, yeah. I think, you know, kind of I think what's helpful is to ask yourself, what's in my best interest as you're moving through your day? Is this adding to the life I want to create for myself, or does this somehow take something away? And, you know, and it's just really helpful to get within and know yourself enough to use those phrases. An example of that is, Jen, when you asked me to do this, and it was like, I was going, okay, is it in my best interest to do this? My anxiety crept in and I'm going, okay, am I going to have enough material to fill the time? And then I did, well, what will happen if I don't? Then what will happen? And then what will happen? And then what will happen? You know, so it put me into this place of, yeah, we're going to go through and we're just going to see how this rolls out.
What do you think? I think it's going pretty good.
Yeah.
I know I've done a lot of talking. Yeah. So who's got questions? Anybody have any questions? It looks like a good time for this.
You can unmute yourself and come back. I can kind of, go ahead, Sally.
Okay, so friends, family, whomever, after this began, kind of changed into different people. You know, some people have become very negative,
Yes.
and they might be people that you care about,
Hmm.
but you really don't have any more room in your head.
Yeah, very good.
You don't have room to take in negativity and to diffuse it into.
Yes.
So what do you do?
Well, that's one of the hidden benefits of not being able to get together, because it's a little easier to not be present with them. Another thing is, if you want, is to decide, do you want to pick up those friendships when we're kind of on the other side and you are in a place to pick them up? You know, and that's a very individualistic answer, but
I
I think,
also think that it goes back to your coping, your ABCs about
Yeah.
setting boundaries on what we're allowed to talk about and for how
Yeah.
long,
yeah,
and just cut it and just say we agree to disagree or whatever it is. And
Yeah.
it's a hard thing to do. It really is a hard thing to do when you're trying to control the situation and everybody's trying to do that. And I think it's about setting boundaries.
Well, emotions can escalate
Ugh.
pretty quickly.
Yeah. Have we all been there? Everybody raise your hand.
yeah. Well, there's an inverse relationship. The more we're emotionally aroused, the less our ability to critically think comes into play.
Yeah.
And I was in a gathering, and it was an outdoor gathering, and someone had some pretty clear boundaries, shall I say, about the whole pandemic. And I saw a fabulous thing happen. One of the people said to that person, we have to agree to disagree. If we continue along this conversation path, we're going to get triggered to the point where we're going to say things that we regret, that we're not going to be able to recover from. And I don't want that to happen.
Right.
So let's talk about something that we have in common. And I was like, wow, to be in some ways to be that self-aware and that articulate in a situation where emotions were being aroused. I was like, man, I got to take a lesson from that.
Yeah.
It's
Mhm.
I have a
huge.
question. Oh, I'm sorry.
Don't
Go
go
ahead.
ahead.
You can't see my face. I don't know why, but it's okay. Sabrina Valentine.
Oh, hello.
In town, and I'm a Facebook addict now that I'm retired. And that is my personal time that I enjoy in the morning when I have coffee. And I've noticed on one of the groups, it's called Milford Matters.
Right.
You know where I'm going with this?
Yeah.
I mean, it gets so nasty, and it's, it's almost political in many.
Yes.
It is political.
Yes.
It
And,
is.
and just recently, everybody was all in an uproar, 118 comments about one of our restaurants downtown. And
Oh, yeah.
a comment that was made when a carryout was called in.
Yes.
They were treated. And
Yes.
it went back and forth and back and forth, and people were commenting that bad attitude, this is not the place for this. But yet the person that posted it said, well, I felt like I wanted to share it with people. And I didn't mean it in a negative way, but it just got out of proportion. So what do you
Yes.
think of that kind of a situation?
Well, one of the things that I've been telling people throughout this whole pandemic is take social media with a grain of salt. People tend to get lost in it. And my personal thing is it's been kind of, I'm editorializing here. I think it's kind of a sewer. And I think it's
Swamp.
really easy to put things on those sites that you wouldn't dare say to someone's face.
I agree. I think there's false courage because
Yes.
you're
Yeah.
not seeing anybody, but you are seeing the person's name.
Yeah, well, there's a belief I have, and that is it's hard to hate somebody face to face.
Yeah. Yes.
It's really easy to hide behind a cloud. So, my thought is that don't go down the rabbit hole with it. Don't follow the thread. I stay on any social media enough so that and this goes for the news feeds as well, stay on it as much as you feel that you know what's going on. But we're living in a 24/7 news feed cycle, and you can have that stuff barraged at you 24/7. I set up I talked earlier about a schedule or having some kind of organizing your day. Decide how much of any of that you're going to take in, how much time you're going to spend doing it, and stick to it. I think picking up Facebook and Twitter and all those things, it's become a default experience for us when something isn't stimulating us or we aren't occupied. And I don't think that's good for our mental fitness at all.
Well, I
Instead-
agree with you. It sort of hits home though, when you
Yes,
these comments and
Yeah.
you can't help, and I can't, and I should,
yeah,
to refrain from commenting back because
Yeah. yep,
it just irritates a lot of us,
yeah,
these bad things, and then we want to defend. And
yeah,
our little town
yeah,
and what we've been through throughout this horrible pandemic.
yes, yeah.
Well,
I
I will admit I had to put something on there.
On that
No,
one,
but what I said was we all need grace at this time. We need
Yes.
grace.
yes,
And it's whether the complaint was legitimate or not, it's a way of people again feeling in control by offering their opinions and judgments, and it makes them feel in control in a situation that's out of control.
yeah,
That's really what it is.
yes,
And
I-
fear.
yes.
It's all
Good.
fear-based. The entire
Yes.
thing is fear-based.
Yes, yeah, and I choose to not live my life from that place. That doesn't mean I'm not going to get triggered in some situations, but yes, I just am not going to live my life that way. It's self-abusive, and I refuse to do it. Yeah, and I felt bad
Thank
for
you.
that
Yeah.
particular location, and I'm just going to go support them.
yes, because I've never had a bad episode in there, and they are under, who knows if it's really true or not sometimes, whether the person making the comment, if that really happened, we're only hearing the one side.
Yes,
Had the waitress put her 2 cents in. I'm sorry about the dog. I'll mute it in a minute. The mailman must be here. So,
Uh.
but anyways, at least she got to defend herself, and I
yeah,
commented back, maybe somebody should call the owner and get his take.
It's just inappropriate to put it on Facebook, in my opinion. So
Yes.
that's just,
Yeah.
it really just comes down to that fact that was an inappropriate thing to put there, and nobody else has business to talk about it. And if it was really an issue, she should call the owner.
Right.
Nobody, I mean, it really doesn't
Right.
need to be on social media at all.
mhm,
It's not
I
like
agree.
somebody was, hurt, or it's ridiculous.
Right.
Ridiculous.
I say hearsay. You just don't know.
Mhm.
But anyways, thanks for answering my question.
Oh, you're welcome. I heard a statistic about 2 months ago that 40% of the restaurants in Michigan have gone out of business.
Wow.
That's so sad.
And when you think of all the lives that touches and the communities that touches, this is, there's a lot of grief there, as I started talking about at the beginning of this session.
Yeah.
Mhm. Yeah, I think, what Jen was talking about, it's fear-based. And you could see that, there's a lot of people that don't tolerate uncertainty. I don't care what the stimulus is for the uncertainty, but you can see that they have inner distress about it. And instead of using soothing and calming techniques, they throw it out there. And, it's kind of like, it's like throwing a bomb onto Facebook in this particular example. And then they get everybody else riled up. So that now there's a group of people that have this going on, and not just that one individual.
And a lot of it it becomes very harmful when there's name calling
Yes.
and called
Yes.
with the K word. I didn't even know what it was. I had to ask my granddaughter.
Oh,
I mean, the name calling is really out of line. Just because you feel one way, you're putting out your opinion, your thoughts, just like the other person, and
mhm,
you should be able to agree to disagree, like you
yes. Yeah.
said earlier.
Well, not only do we not tolerate uncertainty well, we don't tolerate difference well. And that's been a huge thing. You can see that within families. I've had families break up over some of the recent political things that went on in the last election. They're not tolerating differences for race, religious beliefs. They're not tolerating differences on how somebody's living their own life and telling them what job they should have, what college degree they should have, where they should live. And wouldn't it be easier if we just looked at our own lives and worked at our own life and our own world here, rather than stepping in and telling somebody else what to do?
I agree.
Yeah.
Wow.
But
Yeah, and it's all about the uncertainty. We want to have people around us who think and behave like us, because that affirms to us then that, yeah, we're doing the right thing, the correct thing, I'm safe kind of stuff. And when you have somebody come into the group who thinks or behaves differently than you do, it starts you on a path of kind of questioning, the decisions you're making, which leads you to uncertainty, which leads you to being fearful.
mhm.
And it's too bad. We think we want to surround ourselves with people that are exactly like us, but that's probably the worst thing for us. We
Yeah.
really do need people with different opinions and thoughts, and that it really does expand our minds and our thoughts, and makes us a more global thinking person. I love being around diversity and people that think different. Yes, it's hard, it's challenging, because of
Mhm.
course I think I know everything, but and you don't.
Mm-mm, mm-mm. No,
I think it's
but
kind of good to hear another perspective, but I'm sorry.
yeah. No, I agree with you. It is good to hear different perspectives. That's how we grow. If we're with people that are like us all the time, I think it's pretty damn boring.
We're like Stepford Wives.
Yeah, I think that's an excellent example. It is. Yeah. If you're not growing, you're not living.
Right. It's always like, look, man, you do you. Whatever.
You do.
Mhm. Yeah, I get it. Yeah, so any other questions?
I had another comment about you were talking about monkey mind, which is totally yoga. And the
Yeah.
other thing that we talk about in yoga, which I think is very applicable to all of this, is our minds and our brains go into this groove, and everything we do, think, or say kind of goes in this path that is well worn. And the challenge is, and this has really challenged the entire world, is to go off of that path and kind of and weed out that new path, and take your brain from that groove that you're always in. We always do it this way. We always think this way. This is the way things are, to go to something else. And if you can successfully do that, I think that once we get out of this, we will be different people. We will be more, if you can get there, more namaste, more chill, more understanding, and broader.
Yeah. And what proves this point that you're making, Jen, is, have you ever been on a road trip and you think you got the route mapped out, right? What happens to you when you hit a detour? Right?
Everybody freaks.
Yes, because you're talking about, that mind path that takes you in the same direction. Well, that's what a detour is. It takes you out of the ordinary. And watch how you approach the detour. Do you approach it from the place of being curious, of thinking it's an adventure, or are you kicking and screaming into the detour?
Right.
Yeah. Another way I talk about that phenomenon is, imagine if this is applicable with the snow we've had recently, is that you're standing in front of a huge couple of acres full of snow and it's up to your hips, and your task is to walk across that. The first couple of times you do it, you're going to labor and you're going to struggle. But pretty soon, you're just going to follow that same old path because it's easier than starting a different path. And neurologically, our brains are wired that same way. It takes that same neurological structure rather than finding or wiring a new one. And there's a saying in neurology, neurons that fire together wire together. And that's exactly what this is about. Mm-hmm.
So
Yeah.
tell me, I've had this thought. So we were all so scheduled. I've got, I'm always doing, I'm going. So we've taken that all out of the mix, right?
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Some people
So,
have.
When you come back into it, my thought was, this has given us a unique opportunity to decide the pieces that we put back.
Yes.
And the pieces that we say, nope, that wasn't worth it. It's not something I want again.
Yeah.
But what you're saying is people are going to put all the pieces back because that's the easiest way to do it.
They may. We have an opening to shift this. It remains to be seen if people are going to take and walk through that opening. My thought would be, I'll make this about something practical. Right now, so many people are working from home. And if you look at what that's done to the housing industry and office space, et cetera, I think there's a consciousness that's coming about, okay, is working from home mean that you don't have to live near where your office is and that you can be living someplace, but your corporate base is 5 states over? It just depends. And you can see kind of the business world, I think, struggling with that right now, because some of the major corporations have decided they're not going to decide anything about that till 2022. Some of them are not deciding what they're going to do till June, and I've heard deadlines of September this year. But I think there's an opening in the whole process that I'm hopeful that that's the approach people take, that they look at this and say, well, simply because we've done it that way forever, is that enhancing our lives or is that causing difficulty? When you look at,
It's interesting, right? I mean, I think the businesses are finally seeing that this is actually a good thing. And yes, women who have children can do this. I mean, I say women because that's what my perspective was as a young mom. And
right.
I had to leave the corporate world so that I could create a business or a career on my terms. And I never had that opportunity. That's why I'm here, everyone.
Yeah.
Because it started a long time ago. And now I think that there is an opening of consciousness to think that, people are responsible when they're at home. Is it perfect? No, but nothing is perfect. So it's great, I think.
Yeah. I think in studies have shown really recently that people, now that they're not commuting, they're actually working longer at work. And I think that there needs to be some consciousness there about it. You're not commuting, but where do you transition from? It used to be you went to an office, you car rode home, and vice versa. When you started your day, that car ride was a transition. And depending upon how long our commute was, that allowed us that transition time to let go of one and plug into another. Now we're transitioning from our bed to our sofa or our dining room table. And it's much too rapid. We're not built, at least currently, to be able to make that kind of transition for most of us that rapidly. And it's up to us then to acknowledge what we feel about it, set boundaries around it, and then see what the consequence of that's going to be. I'm very hopeful. It used to be, any of you have been in the corporate world particularly, where you've got people taking their laptops and everything on vacation when they go, and they don't unplug. And the warrior at the office was the guy that would send out emails at 2 and 3 in the morning, and you'd get rewarded for that. what I'm very hopeful and holding space over is that as mankind wakes up to this and decides, is this how I want to live my life? And that therefore things change as a result.
It's not even the corporate world. I mean, think about teachers.
Yeah,
Right.
yeah,
I mean, yeah,
yeah.
my husband's a teacher. He works, he's up at 3:30, 4 a.m.
Yeah.
Work on Wednesdays from home.
Yeah,
It's 4 or 5 o'clock, and I'm like, dude, you've been working for 14 hours.
yeah.
Maybe, Andrea, you should say, and then what?
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
then what? If you
Mhm.
woke up at 7, then what?
If there was ever a time to really challenge that kind of mindset, this is it.
Another thing I wanted to go back to when you're talking about mindfulness, I really do believe that we do have an opportunity right now to find those pockets of great in our world, whether it's just, I love watching the little cardinals come to the bird feeder. It's
Mhm.
stupid, but it's not. I love having coffee on my couch in the morning with my husband. I mean, these little things that if you plug into those, a Zoom call isn't that bad. Or, it just, these things are not as big as they might seem if you are plugging into that moment to moment every day.
I think that's excellent. One of the tips I tell people, particularly couples, is, if your normal routine is to eat at the dining room table, get a card table, get something, put it in front of a window, put some candles on the table, and eat a meal in a place where you just have a different perspective.
That's great.
That can be really helpful.
I
Because
can't wait to tell my husband that. He'll go,
Oh.
what?
Yeah, put it in front of the fireplace.
I like that.
Yeah, something like that, because it changes things up. It allows you to see each other differently.
Yeah, interesting.
Mm-hmm.
Good.
Yeah, change your perspective.
And even if we can't go to restaurants, we can order out. When we
Yeah.
order out, make it fun.
Yeah.
I don't know. I just think it's small. If we can look at things as being smaller, oops, sorry
Yeah.
about that. If we can look at things as being smaller, then we get more joy out of those
Mhm.
smaller things and not crave the big stuff.
Well, and my whole thing is in not being able to go out to a restaurant. And Jen, I'm a foodie like you, so I love to cook. My thing to going out was I can cook as well as most of what I eat when I'm out. What I missed was being waited on.
Me too.
So the whole thing to me about going out is less to do with the food and more about I'm being waited on. So then I shifted into, okay, if I want to be waited on, how can I still create that in my life? Who do I need? What's my resource for being waited on?
I agree.
Mhm.
Carry out's a beautiful thing.
Yeah. Yeah. So awesome. So anything else? No?
No,
Well, I
That's
want to
it.
thank everybody who tuned in, and I want to thank Huron Valley Chamber of Commerce for hosting this, and for Jen and Andrea and everybody. Thanks a lot.
this was excellent.
Yeah, it was great.
Dr. Cooper, I'm thrilled with it. Thank you so much.
Thank you. It was
You guys
excellent.
know.
It was nice to see you. Thank you.
My goals book now.
All right. Bye-bye.
I just think that it could be repeated every month, and maybe we'll do that again. Thank you so
Yeah.
much for your
Right.
time.
Well, we can always do an update.
Okay, that
Okay.
sounds good.
Take care.
Thanks
Bye-bye.
everybody for coming.